Welcome to The Writer's Dream. This is a show where authors can talk about how they write books, how they publish books, and how they market books. We are on YouTube. Just look for The Writer's Dream. There are about 100 guests now who have been interviewed, and if you are a budding writer or an old writer, there's a lot of advice for writers and also a lot of very good stories. We also have a Facebook page. If you have a question to direct to The Writer's Dream, or you want to be on The Writer's Dream, please direct that question to The Writer's Dream Facebook page. So, the wonderful world of books and authors. Today's guest is Marianne Kelly, and she is the author, this is her latest book, Tillyweed.
Tillyweed.
Tillyweed. Linda can't read. What is a Tillyweed?
You know, this is a word that came from above, really. It came out of the blue.
Wow.
And I believe in everything out of the blue, so I used it. And it's the name of the house in the story.
Ah. I've named my house.
Did you?
Yes. When I wrote my first book, the house in the book was called Winderley. And so I made a little sign.
Similar somehow, yeah.
But Winderley really means something. So the house is on Fire Island, and it's between the sea and the bay. And so what it really is saying is the wind is a lee.
Ah.
So it's Winderley.
And clever and nice.
But Tillyweed, I love that.
I think it's different enough to draw attention.
That's exactly what you want to do.
I hope so.
That's exactly what you want. So tell me about the story.
Well, the story takes place on the North Shore of Long Island in Seacliff.
Okay.
Which is a beautiful, kind of an art colony, really. And Jenny Rose, a very young woman, comes from Ireland to work as an au pair girl in Seacliff at this wonderful house, Tillyweed. But she's really there to find her birth mother.
Ah.
Claire Breslinski, Jenny Rose's aunt, who lives in Queens, is broken-hearted again. She is my protagonist, Claire Breslinski. And she's a not-so-young woman, but she drives out to tell Jenny Rose that Jenny Rose's birth mother is still in Italy. And while she's there, she sees this cottage perched on a cliff. And she gets a job cleaning out this cottage. And it's a kind of a haunted-looking place. And the reader knows that the cottage might well be haunted because there was a murder committed there. Jenny Rose and Claire are out to solve this mystery, and there are two very handsome Scotsmen who enter the picture and with whom they fall in love.
Well, what could be better than that?
It's a romantic suspense story.
Which is very good. What was the inspiration for your ghost?
Well, not so much for the ghost, but the inspiration for the story came when I drove my mom, who was going to be 100 in November.
Oh, God bless her.
Almost 10 years ago, out to Seacliff, where she had had a kind of a romance as a young girl. And she was sitting there at the docks, and she was remembering this great romance. And suddenly I started thinking, I could put a story here. I could do this. And the characters actually came to me, you know. And that's how it began, really.
So your main character, Claire.
Yes.
How does a nice Irish girl like you come up with a main character with a Polish name?
Uh-oh, my mother again.
Breslinski?
My mother's grandmother was Polish. She was a Breslinski. And that's why I'm Irish on my dad's side.
So then you, like me, are using names from your life in...
Always. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Why make them up?
We're all rich in culture inside, right?
So what you wove into this book was your Irish background with...
Well, yes, well, this is my 7th story, always with Claire Breslinski, and the whole family are Irish and Polish. And I think I delve into the background as much as the present.
Yeah, well, I always find that interesting. My latest book is like that. It's flashbacks to the past. It's about my main character's great-grandmother. So it's really fun to do.
And that's a lovely era to write about. I think people are very interested in that era.
Yeah, no, I think it makes for a really interesting book because you have a story that's going on in modern times, and then you bring in all this nice, kind of nostalgic stuff. Because history, even the bad eras in history have their nostalgic parts.
The Great Generation.
Well, that's, yeah, her great-grandmother, it was a a wasp in World War II. She was like a Rosie the Riveter wasp type person, so that was the greatest generation. Although I think the present generation is probably the greatest generation because we're here.
Can't argue with you with that one.
I have a review of your book.
Uh-oh.
Would you like me to read it?
Sure.
Okay, it says, this is the Claire Breslinski Mysteries, an outstanding series.
Oh, good.
So real that it's hard to relinquish when it's over. I love that. I love when I read a book and I don't want it to end. I want it to go on. A delightful debut. Kelly escalates the suspense while demonstrating an unerring sense for the nuance of family and other relationships. So these are really very, very nice. So Claire is a photographer.
Yes, she's a world traveler, as is Jenny Rose.
Okay.
And I think that adds an extra depth.
Oh, sure.
And it's kind of true. I was a model when I was young and traveled the world, and so I bring that into it as well. Mm-hmm. Claire was not a model. She's the photographer. She's far better than I, but we have a lot of the same experiences.
So tell me about your, the fact that you, Claire comes from Queens, you come from Queens. What
Yes.
you connect, because one of your books, I've listed your books, and we have, one of your books is the Cordelia Squad. Okay?
That takes place in Queens.
A novel of Queens, New York. That's
Yes.
what it says. So you have this, I grew up in Queens too. What's this connection to Queens?
Well, when one grows up in Queens, you know, you can take the girl out of Queens, as they say. And I think the sisters are the most interesting thing. There were 3 sisters, and I love that aspect of a family, the jealousies, the love, the hate, the admiration.
This is the Cordelia Squad. There are 3 sisters?
They're
in this book?
all about that. I think mostly what I write about are the relationships between people.
Yeah.
And yes, I write for women, about women mostly, but there are always men involved.
I do too. I write from the standpoint, from the viewpoint. My viewpoint character is a female, obviously. But my audience is much younger. And I'm finding that the boys like the stories just as much as the girls do. Because I always put very strong male characters in the book. I think that makes a nice balance. You can't, I think a story that has only strong females and no males to bounce off of, literally and figuratively sometimes,
You know, my stories
interesting.
are the kind of thing, it's an old-fashioned yarn. It's not a dark, dark story, even though I deal with dark
themes.
subjects, you know, but it doesn't go into that as much as the relationships between people.
Now, do all of your mystery stories, I guess Keeper of the Mill, Foxglove?
Keeper of the Mill took place in Germany.
Okay. Now, do they all have to, they're all mysteries?
Yes.
Yes, and Claire solves all these mysteries.
Well, I hope so.
Oh, good,
Yes,
yeah,
yeah.
no, but-
She's an amateur sleuth.
Right.
Sometimes
So-
by
so-
accident, but
So
always
is Annie
somehow.
Tillery, yeah, they're both amateur sleuths, but my question is that, does every one of your books have a murder in it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because mine do, yeah, I guess they do and they don't, sort of. The murder sometimes is skirted around. One of them is obviously a murder, and the others are murders
It's
happen.
so creepy and good, don't you?
Yeah,
I love
well,
murder
I mean,
mystery.
Murder mysteries, the mystery genre is so popular, and you wonder why. What is it about? I'm reading one now, which I won't go into the title and whatnot, but it has the most gruesome murder in it. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm loving this book. What is it about me that
Yeah.
attracts me to
Oh,
this
really?
kind of
See, I
stuff?
don't like that. But on TV, I can watch that, but I don't want to read about it. Do you ever watch the Kate Atkinson case histories? They're wonderful.
No. What channel?
Jackson Brody, the Channel 13, the PBS mysteries.
Oh, I watch Vera.
Oh, Vera's my favorite. I love Vera.
Yeah, I like Vera.
You know, I am more in tune with TV characters written by good mystery writers than I am with real life, I think, sometimes.
Yeah,
I just love them.
I worry
wait for
about
them.
that sometimes,
No, I don't,
about
I've
myself.
stopped worrying.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm very attached to PBS, as a matter
Yes,
of
my
fact.
great love.
Yeah. So, when Claire solves these mysteries, does she get into the forensic aspect of it?
No, but I don't claim to be able to solve that. I am more about, as I said, the relationships of people. My sister, by the way, is a retired New York City detective, and I get a lot of ideas from her, which is a great thing.
My main character's aunt, who she lives with, is a New York City police detective. So you have to make
Interesting.
that
We have similar
connection.
backgrounds, yeah.
Yeah, we have to make that connection. But so then when Claire solves the mysteries, it's more like Miss Marple, Agatha
Hopefully.
Christie. In other words,
I love
she's-
Miss Marple,
Yeah,
yeah.
of course. But she always uses the things she observes in the relationships of people and other little things that come her way, letters and
Yes, one hopes it's a modern-day Miss
yeah,
Marple.
yeah. So
It's quite a claim.
yeah.
Yeah.
And see, my in contrast, mine are forensic. They're forensic oriented because I taught it, but it's nice to kind of get away from that because it's kind of gory, I have to tell you.
Yes, I would think so.
So, of these books, I was going to ask you what your favorite one is, but of course you probably
Always
say
the last one.
Tillyweed.
Yes, Tillyweed is no question, and it has a happy ending, which I really love.
Oh, because you don't have to tell us. Don't tell.
No, I'm not telling you.
Don't
I'm
tell
just
us about the
saying there's a
happy
happy ending.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Now, Keeper of the Mill takes place in Germany. Foxglove takes
In Queens,
in Queens,
yes.
and then the next one in Queens, Pack Up the Move.
Pack Up the Moon. Pack Up the Moon was
I can't read my writing.
is the prequel to the sequel. It is Claire when she was living in Europe as a young girl. It's actually the first book I ever wrote, which nobody wanted. And after writing that book, I came home and I said, you know what? I'm going to write one that they're going to like. I'm going to put a detective in there. I'm going to put a dog in there, darn it. And
There you go.
and I carried that manuscript around Manhattan, and I gave it to everyone I could meet. And on a very rainy afternoon, I wound up at the Flatiron Building, walked in, totally soaked, and said to a room full of people in the elevator, well, doesn't anybody know an editor? And one very nice lady raised her hand and said, I'm an editor. And I handed it to her. Well, that was Ruth Cavan, wonderful Ruth Cavan from St. Martin's Press. She called me, I think a month later and said, are you Mary Ann Kelly? I said, yes, I am. She said, well, I'm going to buy your book and I'm going to put it in hardcover and in softcover. This is before ebooks. I was deliriously happy, as you can imagine. This was one of the great days and moments of my life. She changed my life, did Ruth Cavan.
Sure,
Yeah.
that's a great story, and these are the kind of stories that the people who watch the show really like to hear.
Well, you know, and then I wrote 6 books for her, and unfortunately she passed away, and my agent passed away, and I was out in the cold. So what to do? I just kept writing. Nobody wanted me. And as a mystery writer, I belong to Mystery Writers
Of America.
which is, and the New York chapter. And Otto Penzler of Mysterious Books every year has a Christmas party. So I was invited, as everyone is. And my husband said to me, go on, tell him, ask him why he didn't like your book. So as I was leaving, I walked up to him and I said, thank you for having me. Oh, by the way, why didn't you even answer me and tell me you didn't like my book? And he looked at me and he said, oh, the book? I love the book. I'm going to print the book. I'm going to buy it. And I'm going to buy it in ebook as well. I think I kissed him. I was so happy.
Yeah.
So I'm back on the written page.
That's
and
wonderful.
here I am, thanks to Otto Penzler. And
Yeah, when I started publishing, I was under the gun as far as time was concerned because I'm not young enough to go through that process of waiting. When I wrote the books, I wrote them through, of course, I had a mentor, and she wrote the same genre of books, and she said, these are really good. You could get these published, but it'll take you about 7 or 8 years to find somebody. I thought to myself, oh, really? No, I don't think so. And I put them aside, and then when I became more retired from teaching, I decided that I was going to do something with the books. And my personal story is I had been diagnosed with breast cancer.
Aye.
And so I thought to myself, I don't have time. I want to get these books out.
I would have
wrote
done the
them,
same thing.
I wrote them, and I want them out there. And of course, by that time, a huge change occurred in self-publishing. So you have many companies who offer many services.
who is your self-publisher?
My first was iUniverse, and now I use Archway. And the latest book is Archway, and I'm not really sure where I'm going to go with
Are you
book
happy?
number 4.
Are you happy with it?
Yes. I was very happy with my universe because what they did was they said, we hold you to a university, to a standard, to an industry standard. And I was glad to hear that. I didn't want them to just take my manuscript. They gave me an editorial review. They told me what was wrong with the book, what needed to be changed. I made the revisions. I paid for the editing services because I had no idea what I was doing. And I'm a science teacher, and writing a book was like, I had to learn where to put the quotation marks. I had to take a book that I had at home and look to see, what the formatting was when I typed the manuscript and whatnot.
I
So,
did the same thing because I'm not a student, and that's how I learned as
Yeah.
well, by reading.
yeah, and so that's why I turned to self-publishing, and there are times when I regret it, and there are times when I say, no, because I own the book and I own whatever happens to it. So, and I never thought in terms of bestsellers. I really just thought in terms of, these are nice, fun, informative books that kids will like, and what I really tried to do is get them into schools and
Well,
libraries.
you are a teacher.
Yeah, that's my
Yeah.
problem.
That's a great.
But this is wonderful that this is the success story every author looks for.
You know what's wonderful? What's wonderful is when you're sitting at the kitchen table with your computer and you get on a roll and you suddenly find that you're not there anymore. You're just not there. You're in the swim of the story, and you're loving it, and you're as interested in the story as a reader would be. That's really success. That is what writing
I
is
agree
all
with you.
about. And if people aren't, ready to just sit down and do the dirty, they shouldn't be writers, because
Well, the writing's the fun part. The writing is the soul of what you do.
yes.
And then the rest of it, publishing, there are many venues for publishing now, many ways to go about that. And then it's the marketing.
I think if I were starting now, I would write screenplays, because I love HBO and all these wonderful new shows they come out with. I just love all that.
Yeah, well, if you had an agent who decided Tillyweed is going to be made into a movie. Tillyweed is going to be made on a special edition of PBS Mystery on Channel 21, which is the Long Island station.
Merchant Ivory Productions.
Okay, there we go.
Sure.
They would tell you, we don't want you to write the screenplay because we have screenplay writers.
Well, that's okay too.
Yeah, but I think that's interesting. And then actually I went to a Mystery Writers of America event where they had the people being interviewed were the screenwriters for Law and Order. And basically what I learned from that was that when you are a screenwriter, all you do is write lines, and it's the director who puts the emotion into it, who speaks to
Yes,
the actors.
isn't that interesting?
Yeah, and we have to, when we write a book, we have to write not only the lines, but you have to indicate what the emotions of what's going through the mind of
Maybe we should be directors.
That would be fun, wouldn't that be
Yes.
fun? I would love to
Maybe
do
we'll
that.
just change. Let's go.
Why don't we just form our own company?
Okay, I'm in.
Okay.
I'm ready.
All we need to do is print the money.
Oh, no, we can get backing. Don't worry.
Oh, all right.
We'll find someone.
Okay.
You're out there, aren't you?
It would be fun.
Yeah.
So, what's your journey like marketing? Because this is really what everybody
marketing.
asks
This
about.
is not my favorite topic. I'm
No,
really
nobody